The crystal chandelier above table 12 flickered as Tasha Williams balanced 4 plates of seared duck breast on her aching arms. Her feet screamed inside the required black flats, and a strand of dark hair had escaped her tight bun, tickling her cheek. She couldn't brush it away. Not with her hands full. Not with Mr. Peterson watching her every move from the corner, his beady eyes tracking each server like a hawk circling prey. It was supposed to be a normal Tuesday evening shift at Belmonte, the kind of upscale restaurant where a single appetizer cost more than Tasha's weekly grocery bill. She'd been working here for 3 years, ever since Brandon turned 4 and started preschool. The money wasn't great, but the tips could be decent if she smiled enough, laughed at unfunny jokes, and pretended she didn't notice when men's eyes lingered too long. But today was different. Today everything was falling apart. Her phone had buzzed 20 minutes ago. School let out early. Some pipe burst in the cafeteria. Brandon was waiting in the restaurant's small lobby area because her neighbor, Mrs. Chin, who usually watched him, had a doctor's appointment. Tasha had begged the hostess, a young woman named Claire, to let Brandon sit quietly in the corner. Just for an hour. Just until her shift ended. He won't be any trouble, Tasha had promised, her voice tight with desperation. He has his homework. He'll be invisible. Claire had reluctantly agreed, but now, as Tasha delivered plates to table 12, she could see Mr. Peterson making his way toward the lobby. His face was red. His jaw was set. And Brandon, her beautiful 7-year-old boy with his gap-toothed smile and worn sneakers, was sitting exactly where she'd left him, his math worksheet spread across his lap. She set down the plates with practiced precision, murmured the required "enjoy your meal," and turned just as Mr. Peterson's voice cut through the soft jazz playing overhead. This is a restaurant, not a daycare center. Tasha's heart stopped. She moved quickly, weaving between tables, her breath coming in short gasps. Please not now. Not today. She needed this job. They needed this job. Rent was due in 5 days and she was still $40 short. Sir, I'm so sorry, she heard herself saying as she reached the lobby. He's my son. I just need another hour and then we'll be gone. I promise he's not bothering anyone. Mr. Peterson's face grew redder. I don't care if he's the president's son. This is an establishment for paying customers. Get him out. Brandon looked up at her with those wide brown eyes that still saw her as someone who could fix anything. But Tasha couldn't fix this. She couldn't lose this job. But she couldn't abandon her son either. The walls seemed to close in around her. The chandelier light felt too bright. The jazz music too loud. That's when she heard the commotion from the main dining room. Table 8. The large round table by the window that had been reserved for a party of 6. Tasha had been assigned to it tonight, much to the envy of the other servers. The reservation was under the name Damien Cross, and even Tasha, who barely had time to read the news, knew who that was. The billionaire CEO of Crosstech Industries. The man whose face appeared on magazine covers and business news segments. The one who'd started his company from nothing and built it into a technology empire worth billions. But now raised voices carried from that direction. Angry voices. Male voices overlapping in aggression. You think you can just buy your way out of this? We had an agreement, Cross. You made promises. Tasha's mind raced. She looked at Mr. Peterson, at Brandon, at the dining room where her biggest table of the night was falling apart. A wild idea formed. It was crazy. It could get her fired. But she was probably getting fired anyway. Come with me, baby, she whispered to Brandon, taking his hand. She grabbed his backpack with her free hand and started walking toward the dining room, ignoring Mr. Peterson's sputtered protests. Miss Williams, what do you think you're doing? She didn't answer. She couldn't. If she stopped to think, she'd lose her nerve. Table 8 was chaos. Damien Cross sat at the head of the table, his posture rigid, his jaw tight. He wore a navy suit that probably cost more than Tasha's car, and his dark eyes held a mixture of anger and exhaustion. 2 men stood beside the table, leaning over him, their voices growing louder. 3 other people sat frozen in their seats, clearly uncomfortable. Tasha's heart hammered against her ribs. This was insane. This was professional suicide. But Brandon's small hand in hers steadied her resolve. She walked straight to the table, her spine straight, her voice calm. He's with me. Every head turned. The 2 aggressive men stopped mid-sentence. The seated guests stared. And Damien Cross looked up at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Excuse me, one of the standing men said, his tone sharp. Tasha kept her eyes on Damien. My son, she said clearly, giving Brandon's hand a gentle squeeze. He's with Mr. Cross. I'm so sorry we're late. The silence stretched like taffy. Tasha could hear her own heartbeat, could feel the weight of every eye in the dining room. This was it. The moment that would either save her or destroy what little stability she'd built. Then Damien Cross did something unexpected. He smiled. Not a big smile. Just a slight curve of his lips that somehow reached his eyes. He stood up, his full height impressive, and gestured to the empty chair beside him. "Of course," he said smoothly, his voice deep and steady. "Brandon, isn't it? We've been waiting for you." Brandon looked up at Tasha, confused but trusting. She gave him a tiny nod, and he carefully made his way to the chair. Damien pulled it out for him like he was an honored guest, not a 7-year-old in a wrinkled school uniform. The two aggressive men exchanged glances. The energy in the room shifted. Whatever power they'd held moments ago seemed to evaporate in the face of Damien's calm acceptance of this interruption. "Gentlemen," Damien said, his voice taking on a harder edge as he sat back down, "I believe we're done here. My attorney will be in touch about the contract dispute. Please leave. I have a guest to attend to." "This isn't over, Cross," one of them muttered, but they were already backing away, their moment of intimidation broken. Tasha stood frozen, her mind trying to catch up with what just happened. She'd expected to be fired. She'd expected humiliation. She hadn't expected this. Damien looked at her, really looked at her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "Thank you," he said quietly, just loud enough for her to hear. Impeccable timing. Before she could respond, Mr. Peterson appeared at her elbow, his face now pale instead of red. He clearly recognized the situation. Recognized that Tasha had somehow just saved Damien Cross from a very public confrontation. "Miss Williams," he said, his tone completely changed, "perhaps you should take a moment. I'll have someone else cover your tables." It wasn't a suggestion. It was a lifeline. Tasha nodded, mute, and watched as Damien turned his attention to Brandon. "So, Brandon," Damien said, his voice warm, "your mom tells me you're pretty good at math. What grade are you in?" And just like that, her 7-year-old son started talking to a billionaire about fractions. Tasha backed away slowly, returning to the lobby on shaking legs. Claire, the hostess, stared at her with wide eyes. "What just happened?" Claire whispered. Tasha sank into one of the lobby chairs, her whole body trembling now that the adrenaline was fading. "I have no idea." Through the archway she could see Brandon animated now, showing Damien something in his backpack. Probably his prized collection of small plastic building blocks he carried everywhere. Damien leaned in, apparently fascinated, asking questions that made Brandon's face light up. Mr. Peterson hurried past, no longer angry, now looking almost nervous. The other servers whispered behind the wait station. Tasha closed her eyes and tried to breathe. She just gambled everything on a wild instinct. She'd inserted herself and her son into a billionaire's dinner. She'd lied about Brandon being expected. And somehow, impossibly, Damien Cross had played along. What? Why would someone like him help someone like her? Her phone buzzed. A text from her neighbor, "Hope everything's okay. Can watch Brandon tomorrow if you need." Tasha's eyes burned. Kindness. That's what Mrs. Chin offered. Simple, uncomplicated kindness. And maybe, just maybe, that's what Damien Cross had offered too. Not because he had to. Not because he'd get anything from it. But because in that moment, when two people were under attack, Tasha had chosen to help him and he'd return the favor. She watched through the archway as Damien laughed at something Brandon said. A real laugh, not the polite chuckle wealthy people gave. Brandon was showing him how to connect two blocks together, his small fingers patient, his voice earnest. Tasha's chest tightened. Brandon deserved this. Deserved to be treated like he mattered. Deserved to sit at fancy tables and have adults listen to him like his words had value. She'd spent 3 years trying to give him stability, safety, a childhood that didn't feel defined by absence. Brandon's father had left before his first birthday, unable to handle the responsibility of parenthood. Since then, it had been just the two of them against the world. And now here they were. In a moment Tasha couldn't have predicted in a million years. "Miss Williams?" Claire touched her arm gently. "Mr. Cross's assistant just called. He's asking if you could join them at the table when you're ready. He'd like to speak with you." Tasha's stomach dropped. Here it comes. The reality. The consequences. Maybe he'd been kind in the moment, but now he'd want an explanation. An apology. Something. She stood, smoothed her uniform, tucked that escaped strand of hair behind her ear, and walked back into the dining room. The aggressive men were gone. The other guests at the table looked relaxed now, eating their meals, chatting quietly. And at the head of the table, Damien Cross and Brandon were building an elaborate structure out of Brandon's small blocks, their heads bent together in concentration. "Mom," Brandon said excitedly when he saw her, "look what we made. It's a bridge. Mr. Damien says real bridges have to distribute weight evenly or they fall down." "Mr. Cross," Damien corrected gently, but he was smiling. "And your mom probably knows that already. She seems like someone who knows how to keep things standing even when they should fall." Their eyes met and Tasha saw understanding there. He knew. He understood what she'd done and why. "I'm sorry," she started, but Damien held up a hand. "Don't. You helped me when you didn't have to. That took courage." He glanced at Brandon, then back to her. "Join us, please. Have you eaten dinner?" Tasha blinked. "I can't. I'm working." "Not anymore. Not tonight." Damien gestured to an empty chair. "Consider yourself off duty. I spoke with your manager. You're my guest now. Both of you. This was too much. Too strange. Too generous." Tasha's instinct was to refuse, to maintain boundaries, to remember her place. But then she looked at Brandon's hopeful face, at the plate of untouched food in front of the empty chair, at Damien's genuine expression. When had anyone last invited her to just sit down and eat? "Okay," she heard herself say. "Thank you." As she sat, as a server she'd worked with for 2 years brought her a menu with shaking hands, as Brandon chattered about his day at school, Tasha felt the first crack in the wall she'd built around her life. The wall that said she had to do everything alone. That accepting help was weakness. That people like Damien Cross lived in a different world that didn't intersect with hers. But here they were. Intersecting. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a small voice whispered that maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something she'd stopped believing in. Something like hope. Now let me ask you something important. Have you ever had a moment where a simple act of courage changed everything? Where standing up, even when you were terrified, opened a door you didn't know existed? This story is about those moments. About the split-second decisions that redefine our lives. If this beginning has grabbed your attention, if you want to see where Tasha and Brandon's journey leads, please subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to choose between pride and necessity? Between safety and possibility? I'd love to hear your stories. The seared salmon on Tasha's plate was probably delicious. She couldn't taste it. Every bite felt like swallowing cotton while her mind raced through the surreal situation she'd landed in. Across the table, Brandon was in heaven. He'd somehow acquired a dinner roll, which he was carefully dissecting while explaining to Damien the structural integrity of his block bridges. Damien listened with what appeared to be genuine interest, asking questions that made Brandon think harder about his answers. "So if the weight is too much on one side," Damien said, balancing a block on his palm, "what happens?" "It falls," Brandon said confidently. "Everything needs balance. That's what Mr. Rodriguez says in science class." "Mr. Rodriguez is a smart man." Damien set the block down carefully. "That's true in building, in business, in life. Balance is everything." Tasha watched them, her chest tight with emotions she couldn't name. When was the last time an adult man had spoken to Brandon like this? Like he was a person worth listening to? Not since, she couldn't remember. Maybe never. The other guests at the table had finished their meals and quietly departed, offering polite goodbyes to Damien. Now it was just the three of them and the soft murmur of the restaurant around them. "Brandon," Tasha said gently, "finish your vegetables, baby." He made a face but obediently speared a piece of asparagus. Damien chuckled and Tasha caught herself studying him. Really looking at him for the first time beyond the shock of the situation. He was probably in his mid-30s, with dark hair cut short and neat, and eyes that looked almost black in the dim restaurant lighting. His skin was pale, like he spent most of his time indoors, and there were faint lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled more than his serious public image let on. His hands, she noticed, had small scars across the knuckles. Working hands despite the expensive suit. "You're staring," he said quietly, not looking up from the block structure. Tasha flushed. "Sorry? I'm trying to figure out why you did this." "Did what?" "Played along. Let Brandon sit with you. Invited me to dinner." She kept her voice low. "People like you don't usually help people like me." Damien finally looked up and his expression was harder to read now. "People like me? Rich people. Powerful people." Tasha met his gaze steadily. She'd spent too many years bowing and scraping to wealthy customers. Tonight had already broken every rule. She might as well be honest. "People who could have me fired with a phone call." "Is that what you think I'd do?" "I don't know what you do. I don't know you." "Fair enough." Damien leaned back in his chair, studying her the way she'd studied him. "For what it's worth, I don't know you either." But I know you saw me in trouble and helped when you had nothing to gain and everything to lose. That tells me something. It tells you I'm impulsive and bad at keeping my job? He laughed, a real laugh that made Brandon look up and grin. It tells me you're brave. And quick thinking. Those men, they'd been harassing me for weeks. Business rivals who think intimidation tactics work better than lawyers. Having them show up here, causing a scene, it could have turned ugly. But you? He shook his head, something like admiration in his eyes. You walked right into it and changed the entire dynamic. Suddenly I wasn't alone. Suddenly I had a guest waiting. Made them look like the aggressors they are. Tasha hadn't thought about it that way. She'd just been trying to save Brandon and maybe, in some small way, help someone who looked as cornered as she felt. Well, she said carefully, thank you for not having me fired. I should be thanking you. Damien glanced at Brandon, who had returned to his blocks, then lowered his voice. Can I ask you something personal? Tasha tensed. I guess. Is it always just the two of you? The question was gentle, but it hit like a fist. Tasha focused on cutting her salmon into smaller pieces, not meeting his eyes. His father left when he was a baby. So yes, always just us. That can't be easy. It's not. But we manage. She forced herself to look up, to sound stronger than she felt. We're doing fine. Damien didn't argue, but something in his expression said he didn't quite believe her. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a sleek wallet, extracting a business card. He wrote something on the back before sliding it across the table. That's my direct office line, he said. Call me tomorrow morning. 10 o'clock. Tasha stared at the card like it might bite. Why? Because I have a proposition for you. A job offer, actually. But it's late and you both should get home. We can talk details tomorrow. Every warning bell in Tasha's head went off. Job offers from billionaires didn't happen to single mothers working restaurant shifts. This had to be some kind of setup. Some kind of trick. What kind of job? She asked suspiciously. The legitimate kind, Damien said, reading her expression perfectly. I need help with an event I'm hosting. My coordinator quit last week and I'm running out of time. You proved tonight you can handle pressure and think on your feet. I'd like to hire you for a temporary position. 3 weeks. Good pay. Completely above board. I don't have experience in event planning. Do you have experience in keeping everything from falling apart when chaos hits? Despite herself, Tasha smiled. That's pretty much my whole life. Then you're qualified. Damien stood, signaling for the check. Think about it tonight. Call me tomorrow. If you're not interested, no hard feelings. But I think you should at least hear the details. A server rushed over with the bill. Damien handed over a credit card without even looking at the total. While they waited, he turned to Brandon. It was really nice meeting you, Brandon. You're a smart kid. Keep building things. Brandon beamed. Will I see you again? The question hung in the air. Damien glanced at Tasha, a silent question in his eyes. She gave a tiny shrug. Honestly, she didn't know what happened next. This whole night felt like a fever dream. I hope so, Damien said finally. If your mom calls me tomorrow, maybe we can build something bigger next time. Like what? Like a tower. Or a castle. Or whatever you want. Brandon's eyes went wide. Really? Really? The server returned with the receipt. Damien signed it quickly, then stood, adjusting his jacket. Tasha caught a glimpse of the tip line as he handed the receipt back. $500. On a meal that probably cost $300. Her entire body went cold and hot at the same time. That was more than her weekly paycheck. Ready? Damien asked, looking at both of them. Tasha nodded mutely. She helped Brandon pack up his blocks, hyper-aware of every eye in the restaurant tracking their movement. The hostess watched with wide eyes as they walked toward the door. Mr. Peterson was nowhere to be seen, probably hiding in his office, trying to figure out what just happened. Outside, the evening air was cool and fresh after the heavy atmosphere of the restaurant. The parking lot lights cast yellow pools across the asphalt. Damien's car was parked in the closest spot, a sleek black sedan that probably cost more than Tasha would make in 5 years. Her own car was at the far end of the lot. A 15-year-old sedan with a cracked windshield and a temperamental starter. The contrast couldn't be more stark. Where are you parked? Damien asked. Tasha pointed. Over there. We're fine. Thank you for dinner. I'll walk you. That's not necessary. I know. I'm doing it anyway. There was no arguing with his tone. They walked in silence, Brandon between them, chattering about his day at school, about the blocks, about wanting to build a rocket ship next. When they reached Tasha's car, she dug her keys out of her apron pocket, suddenly embarrassed by the rust spots on the door, the fading paint, the general state of disrepair. "This is us," she said unnecessarily. Damien didn't comment on the car. He just waited while she unlocked the back door and helped Brandon climb into his booster seat. "Mom," Brandon said as she buckled him in, "Mr. Cross is nice." "Mr. Damien," she corrected automatically, then caught herself. "I mean Mr. Cross." "Yes, baby. He is." When she closed the door and turned around, Damien was leaning against his own car, hands in his pockets, watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "You're wondering if this is real," he said. It wasn't a question. Tasha crossed her arms, suddenly defensive. "Can you blame me? Men don't just offer strange women jobs for no reason." "I have a reason. I need help and you're capable. That's it." He straightened up, pulling his car keys from his pocket. "But I understand your hesitation. So here's what I'll do. Tomorrow morning, call that number. My assistant, Gloria, will answer. She'll explain everything, answer any questions, and if you're still interested, we'll set up a proper meeting. At my office. During business hours. With other people around. No pressure. No strings. Just a conversation about a job." Tasha wanted to believe him. Desperately. Because the money he'd mentioned could change everything. Could pay the rent and the utilities and maybe even buy Brandon new shoes before his current ones completely fell apart. But belief was dangerous. Belief led to disappointment. "I'll think about it," she said finally. "That's all I ask." Damien smiled, and it transformed his entire face. "Drive safe, Tasha." He knew her name. Of course he did. It was probably on her name tag. But hearing him say it in that warm voice made something flutter in her chest that she firmly squashed. "You too," she managed. She watched him drive away in his expensive car, watched the taillights disappear into the night, before climbing into her own vehicle. The engine started on the third try, coughing to life with a sound like grinding teeth. "Mom?" Brandon said from the back seat. "Are we going to see Mr. Cross again?" Tasha looked at the business card on her passenger seat. Simple, elegant, with gold lettering that caught the parking lot lights. Damien Cross, CEO, Crosstech Industries. "I don't know, baby," she said honestly. "Maybe. I hope so. He's cool." Cool. From Brandon, that was the highest praise. Her son, who was shy around most adults, who still had nightmares sometimes about his father leaving, had opened up to a stranger in a suit who'd taken the time to build blocks and ask questions. Tasha pulled out of the parking lot, her mind spinning. She should say no. Should stick to what she knew, even if what she knew was barely enough. Getting involved with someone like Damien Cross was asking for trouble. For complications. For inevitable disappointment. But what if it wasn't? What if, just this once, the universe was offering her a break? What if kindness didn't have to be suspicious? What if hope wasn't always a setup for heartbreak? She glanced in the rearview mirror at Brandon, already half asleep despite the early hour. His small face was peaceful, his hand clutching the blocks he'd shown Damien. For him she could be brave. For him she could take a risk. For him she could make that phone call tomorrow and see what happened next. Because maybe, just maybe, some offers weren't meant to be refused. Some offers were meant to be accepted with gratitude and an open heart. And maybe, just this once, that would be enough. Tasha called at exactly 10 o'clock. Not 9:55. Not 10:05. Exactly on time, because showing up on time was one of the few things she could control in her chaotic life. The phone rang twice before a warm voice answered. Crosstech Industries, Mr. Cross's office. "This is Gloria speaking." "Hi, this is Tasha Williams. Mr. Cross asked me to call this morning." "Oh yes, Tasha. He's been expecting you." "Hold on just one moment, honey." The line went quiet except for soft instrumental music. Tasha paced her tiny kitchen, stepping over Brandon's backpack that she'd forgotten to put away last night. The apartment was silent. Brandon was at school. Mrs. Chun from downstairs had agreed to pick him up at 3, giving Tasha time for whatever this meeting turned out to be. She actually went. She still hadn't decided. "Tasha?" Gloria's voice returned. "Mr. Cross would like to meet with you this afternoon. Are you available at 2 o'clock? Tasha's shift at the restaurant didn't start until 5. "Yes, I can do 2. "Wonderful. I'm texting you the address now. Come to the main entrance of Crosstech Tower. Security will be expecting you. Do you need directions?" "No, I know where it is." Everyone knew where Crosstech Tower was. The sleek glass building dominated the downtown skyline, 50 stories of success and ambition. "Perfect. Oh, and Tasha? Don't be nervous. Mr. Cross doesn't bite, and this really is just a conversation. See you at 2. The line went dead. Tasha stared at her phone at the text message that had just appeared with the address, and tried to calm her racing heart. She spent the next 3 hours in a panic. What did you wear to meet a billionaire CEO? Her work uniform wouldn't do. Neither would her jeans with the hole in the knee. She finally settled on her one good dress, a simple blue cotton dress she'd bought at a thrift store 2 years ago for a cousin's wedding. It was clean, modest, and didn't scream poverty even if it whispered it a little. At 1:30 she took the bus downtown. The ride cost $2.50. She'd budgeted for groceries, but she couldn't show up in her dying car. Not to a place like Crosstech Tower. The building was even more impressive up close. All glass and steel, reflecting the sky and clouds, looking like something from a science fiction movie. Well-dressed people flowed in and out of the revolving doors, everyone moving with purpose, everyone belonging there. Tasha definitely did not belong there. She almost turned around. Almost got back on the bus and pretended this whole thing never happened. But then she thought of Brandon's hopeful face, of the pile of bills on her kitchen counter, of the way Damien had listened to her son like he mattered. Courage. She needed courage. The lobby was enormous, all white marble and modern art. A security desk sat in the center, staffed by 2 guards in crisp uniforms. Tasha approached on shaking legs. "I'm here to see Mr. Cross," she said, hating how small her voice sounded in this huge space. "I have a 2 o'clock appointment." Tasha Williams. One of the guards checked a tablet then smiled. "Yes, ma'am. Take the elevator bank on the left to the 50th floor. Ms. Martinez will meet you there." "Ma'am." He'd called her ma'am. Like she was someone important. Tasha nodded her thanks and headed to the elevators, trying not to gawk at everything. The elevator was glass on one side. As it rose, the city spread out below, getting smaller and smaller until cars looked like toys and people disappeared entirely. Tasha's stomach lurched, and not just from the height. The 50th floor was quieter than the lobby. Thick carpet absorbed sound. Artwork lined the walls, real paintings in expensive frames. And there, behind a curved reception desk, sat a woman in her late 50s with silver hair and a kind face. "You must be Tasha," she said, standing and coming around the desk with an outstretched hand. "I'm Gloria Martinez. We spoke on the phone." Her handshake was firm and warm. Her eyes were kind. Tasha felt some of her tension ease. "It's nice to meet you in person," Tasha said. "Likewise. Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee?" "Water would be great, thank you." Gloria guided her to a seating area with comfortable chairs and a view of the city. She returned with a bottle of water and sat across from Tasha, her posture relaxed and friendly. "Okay," Gloria said, "before we go in to see Mr. Cross, let me give you the basics. He's hosting his annual charity gala in 3 weeks. It's a huge event, nearly 500 guests, lots of donors, lots of media attention. The woman who was coordinating it quit suddenly last week to take a job in Europe. Mr. Cross needs someone to step in and handle the final preparations." Tasha's hands tightened around the water bottle. "I've never planned an event like that. I don't have any qualifications. What you have is something more valuable. You have composure under pressure. Mr. Cross saw that last night. He needs someone who won't fall apart when things go wrong, because things always go wrong." Gloria smiled. "The job pays $15,000 for 3 weeks of work. 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. Mr. Cross will provide childcare vouchers so Brandon is taken care of while you work." $15,000. Tasha's vision actually blurred. That was more than she made in 6 months at the restaurant. That was rent for months. That was new clothes for Brandon. That was fixing her car. That was breathing room. "That's too much," she heard herself say. Gloria's eyebrows rose. "Honey, you're the first person I've ever heard say that. Most people try to negotiate for more. I just don't understand why he'd pay so much for someone inexperienced. Because the event is in 3 weeks and you're inheriting a mess. The previous coordinator left things half done. You'll be working long hours, solving problems constantly, and dealing with vendors and donors who are used to getting their way. Trust me, you'll earn every penny." Gloria leaned forward. "Here's what I think. I think you're someone who's used to being underestimated. Used to working twice as hard for half the recognition. Mr. Cross sees potential in you. The question is, do you see it in yourself?" The question hit harder than it should have. Did she see potential in herself? Or had years of just surviving beaten that out of her? "I want to," Tasha said quietly. "I want to believe I can do this." "That's a start." Gloria stood. "Come on. Let's go talk to the boss." Damien's office was at the end of a short hallway. Gloria knocked once, then opened the door. If Tasha thought the lobby was impressive, Damien's office was on another level entirely. Floor-to-ceiling windows on two sides gave a view of the entire city. Modern furniture in shades of gray and blue created a space that was both professional and somehow comfortable. And there, behind a massive desk, sat Damien Cross in a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, looking at a computer screen with a frown. He looked up when they entered, and his expression cleared immediately. He stood, coming around the desk with an easy smile. "Tasha. Thanks for coming. Thank you for inviting me." She shook his hand, trying not to think about how warm it was, how his grip was firm but not overwhelming. "Sit please." He gestured to a small conference table by the windows. Gloria excused herself, closing the door quietly. Tasha sat, her back straight, her hands folded in her lap. Professional. She could be professional. Damien sat across from her, and in the daylight streaming through the windows, she could see him more clearly. The small scar above his left eyebrow. The way his hair was starting to gray at the temples. The exhaustion around his eyes that suggested he didn't sleep enough. "Did Gloria explain the situation?" he asked. "The gala. 3 weeks. I'd be taking over for someone who quit." "Right. I'll be honest with you. It's not going to be easy. The venue is booked, the guest list is set, but there are 100 details that need attention. Catering. Entertainment. Decorations. Seating arrangements. Donations. Media. And probably things I'm forgetting because I'm not an event planner." He rubbed his face tiredly. "I need someone I can trust to handle it. Someone who won't lie to me about problems or try to make everything look perfect when it's falling apart. Why do you think I'm that person? You barely know me. I know you walked into a bad situation last night and made it better. I know you did it even though it could have cost you your job. That tells me you act when action is needed, not after it's safe." He met her eyes steadily. "I grew up with nothing, Tasha. Raised by a single mom who worked 3 jobs. I know what it looks like when someone is trying to hold everything together with duct tape and determination. I recognize it because I lived it." The vulnerability in his voice surprised her. This wasn't the polished CEO from magazine covers. This was someone who understood struggle. "I'm scared I'll mess it up," she admitted. "That I'll take your money and fail and let you down. Then we'll fix it together. I'm not hiring you and disappearing. This is a partnership. You'll have my full support, Gloria's help, and access to any resources you need." He leaned forward. "Take the job, Tasha. Let yourself have this chance. Let Brandon see his mom succeed at something big." That last part almost broke her. Because yes, she wanted Brandon to see that. Wanted him to know that good things could happen. That hard work mattered. That sometimes kindness was repaid. "Okay," she whispered. "Yes, I'll do it." Damien's smile was brilliant. "Thank you. You won't regret this. When do I start?" "Tomorrow morning. 8 o'clock. Gloria will have everything ready for you." He stood, extending his hand again. "Welcome to Crosstech, Tasha." She shook his hand, feeling the warmth of his palm against hers, and let herself smile. Really smile. Because for the first time in years, something good was happening. Something hopeful. Something that felt like a door opening instead of closing. "Thank you," she said. "For this opportunity. For believing I can do it. Thank you for saying yes." He walked her to the door, then paused. "How's Brandon doing? Excited about building more structures?" The fact that he remembered that he cared enough to ask made Tasha's chest tight. "He hasn't stopped talking about you. About bridges and weight distribution and towers." "Good. Tell him I'm looking forward to our next building session." "You really meant that? About seeing him again?" "I don't say things I don't mean." Damien's expression was serious now. "I like your kid, Tasha. He's smart and curious, and I remember being that age and having no one to encourage those things. If you're comfortable with it, I'd like to spend more time with him. Build things together. Answer his questions." Tasha's eyes burned. She blinked hard, refusing to cry in her new boss's office. "He'd love that. Then we'll make it happen." Gloria appeared in the hallway holding a folder. "All set? Tasha, this has the paperwork you'll need to fill out. Employment forms, direct deposit information, all that fun stuff. You can drop it off tomorrow when you come in." Tasha took the folder, feeling the weight of it, the reality of it. This was happening. She had a job. A real job with real pay and real potential. "See you tomorrow," Damien said. 8 o'clock. "I'll be here," Tasha promised. On the elevator ride down, she let herself feel it. The hope. The possibility. The sheer relief of knowing that maybe, just maybe, things were looking up. She called Mrs. Chen from the lobby. "I got the job." "Oh honey, that's wonderful. Brandon will be so excited. Can you keep him a little longer? I need to go tell my manager at the restaurant that I'm quitting. Take all the time you need. Mr. Peterson wasn't happy about her resignation, but he didn't fight it. He probably sensed he'd lost whatever power he had over her the moment Damian Cross became her ally. Tasha walked out of Belmonte for the last time, her apron left on the counter, her head held high. 3 years of aching feet and forced smiles and barely making ends meet, done. On the bus ride home, she looked out the window at the city passing by and let herself hope. Really hope. Because sometimes accepting help wasn't weakness. Sometimes it was the bravest thing you could do. And sometimes, just sometimes, people who offered help actually meant it. Tasha arrived at Crosstech Tower at 7:45 on her first official day. Better early than late, her mother used to say. Well, her mother had said a lot of things before the cancer took her 6 years ago, and that particular piece of advice had stuck. Gloria was already at her desk, a steaming mug of coffee in hand, looking fresh despite the early hour. She smiled when she saw Tasha. Eager beaver. I like it. Did you bring the paperwork? Tasha handed over the folder. Everything filled out, double-checked, signed in all the right places. Gloria flipped through it quickly, nodding approval. Perfect. Come on, let me show you your office. I have an office? Of course you have an office. You can't coordinate a major event from the hallway. Gloria led her down a corridor Tasha hadn't seen yesterday. They stopped at a door with a small nameplate that made Tasha's breath catch. Tasha Williams, Event Coordinator. It's temporary, Gloria said, misreading her expression. Just for the 3 weeks. But I figured you'd want proper space to work. It's perfect, Tasha managed. Her own office. Her own nameplate. Her own space where she belonged. The office was smaller than Damian's, of course. But it had a desk, a computer, a phone, and a window with a view of the city. Boxes and files covered every surface. This is everything from the previous coordinator, Gloria explained. Contracts, vendor lists, seating charts, donation records. It's organized mostly. She was good at her job, just got a better offer. Gloria set her coffee down and started pulling files from boxes. Here's what I'd suggest. Spend today reviewing everything. Make notes. Figure out what's done and what still needs doing. Tomorrow we'll start tackling the gaps. Tasha asked. Honey, you didn't think we'd throw you in the deep end alone, did you? I've been coordinating events for Mr. Cross for 15 years. I'll help you through the rough patches. Gloria squeezed her shoulder. You're going to do great. I can tell. Left alone, Tasha stood in the middle of her temporary office and tried to absorb the reality of her situation. Yesterday morning, she'd been serving overpriced duck breast to people who barely acknowledged her existence. Today, she had a desk and a nameplate and 15,000 reasons to succeed. She rolled up her sleeves and got to work. The files were organized but overwhelming. The venue was the Grandview Hotel's ballroom, booked for 3 weeks from Saturday. Capacity, 500. Catering was half finalized. Entertainment was booked but needed confirmation. Decorations were chosen but not ordered. Donations were pledged but not all confirmed. Media contacts needed follow-up. And the seating chart looked like a complicated puzzle that would make Brandon's block tower seem simple. By lunchtime, Tasha's head spun with information. She'd made pages of notes, created multiple lists, and identified at least 20 urgent items that needed immediate attention. A knock on her door made her look up. Damian stood in the doorway, sleeves rolled up like yesterday, looking curious. How's it going? He asked. Honestly? I'm terrified. But I think I'm getting a handle on things. He came in, glancing at her color-coded lists with approval. You're a visual organizer. That's good. Can I see? Tasha showed him her notes. He listened carefully as she walked through the priorities she'd identified, asking questions that were smart and relevant. The catering is the biggest concern, Tasha explained. We have appetizers and desserts confirmed, but no main course decision. And the venue needs final numbers in 2 weeks. What are the options? The previous coordinator narrowed it down to 3 choices. Beef, chicken, or salmon. All 3 work for the price point and dietary restrictions. What would you choose? Tasha blinked. Me? Yes, you. You're the coordinator. I'd go with salmon. It's elegant, it works for more dietary needs than beef, and the Grandview chef is known for their fish dishes. Done. Salmon it is. Damian made a note in his phone. What else? They spent the next hour going through her list together. Damian made decisions quickly, trusted her judgment, and offered insights that only someone who'd hosted dozens of these events would have. By the time he left for a meeting, Tasha had checked off half her urgent items. "Join me for lunch tomorrow," he said from the doorway. "We can go over the entertainment details." "You don't have to do that. I know you're busy. I'm making time. This event matters to me and I want it to succeed. That means supporting you." He smiled. "Besides, Gloria says you haven't eaten all day. Can't have my event coordinator passing out from hunger." After he left, Tasha sat back in her chair, staring at her lists with a feeling she hadn't experienced in years. Pride. She was actually doing this. And so far she hadn't failed. Her phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chin. "Brandon wants to know if you're working with Mr. Cross today." Tasha smiled and typed back, "Yes. Tell him I am. And that Mr. Cross says hello." The response was immediate. "He's dancing around the apartment." You've made his day. The rest of the week passed in a blur of phone calls, emails, and meetings. Tasha confirmed the catering, finalized the entertainment, a string quartet for dinner, a jazz band for dancing, approved the decoration concept, elegant silver and blue, sophisticated but not stuffy, and started working through the seating chart nightmare. Gloria became her lifeline. The older woman had a network of contacts that seemed to extend everywhere, and a calm demeanor that never wavered even when vendors tried to change terms or donors called with special requests. "You're doing really well," Gloria said on Friday afternoon, reviewing Tasha's progress. "Honestly, better than I expected for someone new to this. I'm just following the previous coordinator's plan." "No, you're improving on it." The salmon choice was smarter. "The adjusted seating arrangement for the VIP section makes more sense. You have good instincts." Gloria closed the file she'd been reviewing. "Mr. Cross told me to give you these." She handed over 2 tickets. Tasha looked at them in confusion. "Science Museum," Gloria explained. "For you and Brandon. Tomorrow." Mr. Cross thought Brandon might enjoy it, especially the engineering exhibit. Tasha's throat tightened. He didn't have to do this. He wanted to. He also asked if Brandon might want to come by the office sometime. Apparently there's a building project calling his name. "Gloria, this is too much. He's already given me this job. He doesn't need to do more." "Honey, let me tell you something about Mr. Cross. He grew up hard. Really hard. His father left before he was born, just like Brandon's. His mother worked herself to exhaustion trying to provide. He knows what it's like to be the kid whose parent is always working, always stressed, never has time for extras. If he wants to do something nice for Brandon, let him. It means something to him." Tasha looked at the museum tickets in her hand. Free admission for 2. Access to all exhibits. Valid for the entire weekend. "Okay," she whispered. "Thank you." That evening, when she picked Brandon up from Mrs. Chen's apartment, she showed him the tickets. His reaction was everything. "The Science Museum? Really? Can we go tomorrow?" "Yes, baby. We can go tomorrow." "Did Mr. Cross really send these?" "He did." Brandon threw his arms around her waist, squeezing tight. "He's the best, Mom. The best." Saturday at the Science Museum was magical. Brandon ran from exhibit to exhibit, asking questions, reading every sign, trying every interactive display. In the engineering section, they built bridges together, testing how much weight different designs could hold. Tasha took pictures on her phone, capturing Brandon's joy. Around noon, as they were examining a display about skyscrapers, a familiar voice spoke from behind them. "That one's not right." Tasha spun. Damien stood there in jeans and a casual jacket, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. "Mr. Cross." She couldn't hide her surprise. "I was in the neighborhood. Thought I'd check out the engineering exhibit." He winked at Brandon. "Plus, someone told me there was a pretty cool kid here who likes building things." Brandon's face lit up like the sun. "Did you come to see me?" "Absolutely. Think you can show me around?" For the next hour, Tasha watched Damien and Brandon explore exhibits together. Damien listened to Brandon's explanations, asked questions that made Brandon think, and generally treated her son like he was the most interesting person in the world. In the gift shop, Brandon found a complex building set that made his eyes go wide. "Mom, look at this. It's a whole city." Tasha looked at the price tag and her heart sank. $60. Way outside their budget, especially now that she'd quit the restaurant and hadn't received her first paycheck yet. "That's really cool, baby. But we can't get it today." Brandon's face fell, but he nodded, putting the box back carefully. He was used to hearing no. Used to understanding that money was tight. It broke Tasha's heart every time. "How about this?" Damien said casually, picking up the box. "I'll get this one and we can build it together. All 3 of us. Maybe tomorrow afternoon if your mom doesn't have plans?" Damien, you don't have to, Tasha started, but he was already at the register. It's a gift. For a friend. Friends give friends gifts, right, Brandon? Right, Brandon said, practically vibrating with excitement. Outside the museum, as they prepared to part ways, Damien crouched down to Brandon's level. See you tomorrow? He asked. Yes, Brandon said solemnly. We're going to build a whole city. We are indeed. Damien stood looking at Tasha. If that's okay with you. What could she say? That she was uncomfortable with how kind he was being? That accepting gifts made her feel vulnerable? That she was terrified of Brandon getting attached to someone who might disappear? Or could she just say thank you? Could she accept that maybe, just maybe, this was what it looked like when good things happened? It's okay with me, she said. Thank you. For the tickets. For the gift. For making his day. He makes my day too, Damien said simply. See you tomorrow. My place. I'll text you the address. He walked away, leaving Tasha standing on the museum steps with her confused heart and her ecstatic son. Mom, Brandon said, tugging her hand. I really like Mr. Cross. I know, baby. Do you like him? Did she? It was complicated. He was her boss. He was wealthy and powerful and lived in a completely different world. But he was also kind and patient and seemed to genuinely care about Brandon. And maybe just a little bit she was starting to like him too. Yes, she said carefully. I do. Good. Brandon swung her hand as they walked toward the bus stop. Because I think he likes us too. Out of the mouths of children, Tasha thought. Wisdom she wasn't quite ready to face. But ready or not, something was building between them. Something that felt both terrifying and wonderful. Something that made her think that maybe taking chances wasn't always dangerous. Maybe sometimes, it was exactly what she needed. Damien's apartment was nothing like Tasha expected. She'd imagined something cold and modern, all steel and glass, designed to impress rather than comfort. Instead, when he opened the door Sunday afternoon, she found herself looking at warm hardwood floors, comfortable furniture, and walls lined with bookshelves. Welcome, Damien said, stepping aside to let them in. Sorry about the mess. I wasn't expecting company until I invited you yesterday. The apartment was spotless. Tasha almost laughed. Her idea of mess and Damien's were clearly very different. Brandon clutched the building set box to his chest, his eyes wide as he took in the space. Tasha put a gentle hand on his shoulder. Remember your manners, baby, she said quietly. Thank you for inviting us, Mr. Cross, Brandon said perfectly. You're very welcome. And I think we can drop the Mr. Cross thing when we're building together. Damien is fine. If that's okay with your mom? Tasha hesitated, then nodded. Formality felt strange in this casual setting, with Damien in worn jeans and a t-shirt advertising some tech conference. Damien it is, she agreed. They set up at the dining table, a beautiful piece of dark wood that probably cost more than Tasha's car. Damien spread out the instructions while Brandon carefully opened the box, organizing all the pieces by type with a focus that made Tasha's chest swell with pride. Okay, Damien said, studying the instruction booklet. Looks like we start with the base structures. Buildings first, then roads, then details. For the next 2 hours, the three of them worked together. Brandon's small fingers were surprisingly deft, connecting pieces with careful precision. Damien explained engineering concepts as they built, making it educational without being boring. And Tasha found herself relaxing, laughing, enjoying this simple moment of creation. Mom, look, Brandon said, holding up a completed building. We made a bank. That's amazing, baby. Where should it go? Damien asked, pointing to their growing city layout. What makes sense from an urban planning perspective? Brandon considered seriously. Near the roads. People need to get to banks. Smart thinking. Damien helped him place it. See how we're creating a pattern? This is how real cities develop. Function follows need. Tasha watched them work and something in her chest loosened. A tension she'd carried for so long she'd stopped noticing it. The tension of doing everything alone. Of having no one to share Brandon's small triumphs. Of being the only adult in the room always. Coffee? Damien asked, catching her watching. I have tea too if you prefer. Coffee would be great. In the kitchen, which was open to the dining area, Damien moved with easy efficiency. He clearly cooked here, actually used the space despite what Tasha assumed was enough money to eat out every night. You're good with him, Tasha said quietly so Brandon wouldn't hear. With Brandon. He's an easy kid to be good with. Damien poured coffee into 2 mugs. Smart. Curious. Polite. You've done a great job raising him. The compliment hit harder than it should have. No one complimented her parenting. Most people either pitied her for being a single mother or judged her for it. "Thank you," she managed. "It hasn't been easy. The best things never are." Damien handed her a mug, their fingers brushing briefly. "Can I ask you something personal?" Here it comes, Tasha thought. The questions about Brandon's father. About her choices. About how she ended up here. "Okay," she said carefully. "Why did you almost say no to the job? I could see you wanted to refuse." That wasn't the question she'd expected. Tasha sipped her coffee, buying time to formulate an answer. "Pride, I guess. And fear. I'm not used to people offering help without strings attached. Usually, when someone gives you something, they expect something back." "What do you think I expect back?" "I don't know. That's what scares me." She met his eyes directly. "You're a billionaire CEO. I'm a single mother who was barely making rent working at a restaurant. Our worlds don't overlap. So why are you being so kind to us? What do you get out of it?" Damien leaned against the counter, considering his answer carefully. "When I was 8, my mom was working 3 jobs. She was exhausted all the time. Stressed all the time. I was basically raising myself. One day our neighbor, Mr. Kim, he owned a hardware store. He noticed I was always alone. Started inviting me to help him at the store after school. Taught me about building things. About how tools work. About problem solving." He paused, staring into his coffee. He didn't have to do that. Had no reason to care about some random kid. But he did it anyway. And those afternoons at his store, learning real skills, feeling like someone valued my time, it changed my life. Gave me confidence. Gave me a path. "What happened to him?" Tasha asked softly. "He died when I was 13. Heart attack. But what he gave me didn't die. That understanding that sometimes people help because they can. Because they remember being helped. Because kindness doesn't need a transaction to be real." Damien looked at her directly. "I see Brandon and I see myself. Smart kid. Loving parent doing everything possible to give him a chance. If I can make his childhood a little brighter, give him opportunities, be someone who encourages his interests, why wouldn't I?" Tasha's eyes burned. She blinked hard, refusing to cry in front of him. "You're a good person," she whispered. "I'm a person who had help when I needed it. Now I can offer help. It's that simple." He smiled gently. "No strings, Tasha. I promise. Just someone who sees potential and wants to support it." They returned to the table, where Brandon had continued building on his own, creating an impressive street layout. "Look at this," Damien said, genuinely impressed. "You made a whole downtown area. With parking," Brandon pointed out proudly. "Cars need somewhere to go." "Absolutely they do." The afternoon stretched into evening. Damien ordered pizza, which Brandon declared the best he'd ever had. They finished the city project, adding tiny cars and people figures, creating a miniature world complete with parks and shops and homes. "Can we take a picture?" Brandon asked. "To remember?" "Better idea," Damien said. "Let's leave it here. That way you can come back and add to it. Maybe build a whole transportation system. Expand the city limits." Brandon's eyes went wide. "Really? We can come back. Anytime you want." "Well, anytime your mom says it's okay." 2 sets of hopeful eyes turned to Tasha. How could she say no? How could she deny Brandon this joy? And if she was being honest with herself, how could she deny that she wanted to come back too? "We'd like that," she said. "Very much." As they prepared to leave, Damien walked them to the door. "Tomorrow's Monday. Back to work for us. Right?" Tasha had almost forgotten about the gala in the peace of the afternoon. "I need to finalize the donation tracking system and start confirming RSVPs. Sounds like you have a plan." "That's good." He crouched down to Brandon's level. "Thanks for helping me build today. You're a great architect. Thanks for teaching me stuff. You're a great teacher." The simple exchange, so genuine and warm, made Tasha's throat tight again. In the car, Brandon chattered the whole way home about everything they'd built, everything he'd learned, how cool Damien's apartment was. Tasha listened, her heart full and confused in equal measure. She was falling for him. There was no use denying it. Not romantically, not yet, but falling nonetheless. Falling into trust. Falling into hope. Falling into the dangerous belief that maybe this was real. And the scariest part was that Brandon was falling too. If this ended, if Damien disappeared from their lives after the gala was over, it wouldn't just hurt her. It would hurt her son. And protecting Brandon from hurt was her primary job as a mother. But maybe, just maybe, not all risks ended in pain. Maybe some risks ended in joy. She was about to find out which kind this was. Monday morning brought Tasha back to reality with a crash. The gala was now exactly 1 week away, and her to-do list had somehow grown despite her best efforts. Gloria appeared in her office doorway at 8:30, holding a tablet and wearing an expression that telegraphed trouble. "What's wrong?" Tasha asked, already pulling up her notes. "The string quartet cancelled. Apparently they got a better offer for the same night." Tasha's stomach dropped. "You're kidding. I wish I was. I'm working on finding a replacement, but most good musicians are already booked. It's short notice." This was exactly the kind of crisis Tasha had been dreading. The kind where there was no easy solution, just damage control and crossed fingers. "Okay," she said, forcing herself to stay calm. "Let's make a list of every musician or agency we can contact. Classical focus, jazz acceptable. Price range up to what we were paying the quartet, maybe a bit more if we have to. I'll start calling." They spent the entire morning on the phone. By lunch, Tasha had left 17 messages, sent 23 emails, and was starting to panic. A knock on her door interrupted her latest voicemail. Damien entered without waiting for a response, took one look at her face and frowned. "What happened?" Gloria filled him in while Tasha pressed her fingers against her temples, trying to ward off a headache. "Right," Damien said decisively. "I'll make some calls." "Tasha, take a break. You can't solve problems if you burn out. We don't have time for breaks. The gala is in 7 days. Which is why you need to pace yourself. Come on." He practically pulled her out of her chair. "We're getting lunch." "Damien?" "Not a request. Gloria, hold down the fort." He drove them to a small diner 3 blocks from the office. The kind of place where the food was good and cheap and no one cared if you sat for an hour. They slid into a booth by the window, and Tasha felt some of her tension ease just from the change of scenery. "I should have backup plans," she said, staring at the menu without seeing it. "For everything. That's what a good coordinator does. You had a backup plan. Gloria's working it. But sometimes things happen that you can't control. That's not failure. That's just life." The waitress came. Damien ordered a burger. Tasha ordered soup, her stomach too knotted for anything heavier. "Tell me something," Damien said once they were alone again. "What's the worst thing that could happen?" "We have no music at the gala." "Would that ruin the entire event?" "It would be embarrassing. Unprofessional. But the food would still be good. The decorations would still be beautiful. The donations would still come through. The core purpose of the event would still be achieved." He leaned forward. "I'm not saying the music doesn't matter. But you're acting like one problem means total failure. That's not true." Tasha closed her eyes. "I just don't want to let you down." "You won't. You couldn't." "Tasha, look at me." She opened her eyes. His expression was serious, intense. "I hired you because you're capable and smart. Not because I expected perfection. Things will go wrong. They always do. What matters is how we handle it together. And we will handle it together. Understood?" The kindness in his voice, the absolute confidence, made something crack in Tasha's chest. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Their food arrived. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then Damien's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and smiled. "I have a jazz trio that can do the gala. Friends of a friend. I sent them the details and they're available." Relief flooded through Tasha so strongly she almost laughed. "You're serious?" "Completely. They're sending over a demo by this afternoon. If you approve, they're yours." "Damien, thank you. That's what partners do. We solve problems together." Partners. The word stuck with Tasha as they finished lunch and drove back to the office. She'd never had a partner. Not in parenting, not in work, not in life. Always alone, always carrying everything herself. Having someone to share the load felt strange and wonderful. The demo from the jazz trio was excellent. Professional, sophisticated, exactly right for the gala atmosphere. Tasha approved them immediately and felt a massive weight lift from her shoulders. That evening, after picking up Brandon from Mrs. Chen's, they had dinner at their small kitchen table. Brandon's homework was spread out between them, math problems that made his face scrunch up adorably. "Mom, can Damien help me with this?" "He's not here, baby. Can we call him?" Tasha hesitated. It felt too personal, too presumptuous. But then she remembered Damien's words. Partners. People who help each other. "Let me text him first. See if he's busy." The response came immediately, "Not busy. Want a video call?" So they did. For the next 30 minutes, Damien walked Brandon through his math problems, explaining concepts in ways that made sense to a 7-year-old mind. Brandon's frustration melted into understanding, then pride when he solved the last problem on his own. You did it, Damien said warmly. That's the hard way too. Good job. Thanks for helping me. Anytime. Hey, I was thinking, how would you two like to come to the gala? I have plenty of tickets. Brandon looked at Tasha with pleading eyes. She tried to find reasons to say no. They had nothing appropriate to wear. Brandon might be bored. It was late on a Saturday night. But looking at her son's hopeful face, at Damien's genuine invitation on the screen, she couldn't find a real reason. Just fear. Just the voice that said people like them didn't belong at fancy galas. We'd love to, she heard herself say. But we don't have clothes, Damien finished. Already thought of that. Consider it part of the job. You're the event coordinator. You need to be there in professional attire. And Brandon's your guest, so he needs proper clothes too. Gloria will take you shopping this week. My treat. Not negotiable. There was that generosity again. That casual kindness that made Tasha's defenses crumble. Okay, she whispered. Thank you. After they ended the call, Brandon did a happy dance around the kitchen. We're going to a fancy party, Mom. A real fancy party. We are, she agreed, pulling him into a hug. And you're going to be the most handsome boy there. You'll be the prettiest, Mom. Her heart squeezed. I love you, baby. I love you too. He pulled back, his expression suddenly serious. Mom? Is Damien going to stay? Or is he going to leave like Dad did? The question hit like a punch. Tasha knelt down, taking Brandon's face in her hands. I don't know what's going to happen after the gala, she said honestly. Damien is my boss. This is a temporary job. But I promise you, no matter what happens, we'll be okay. We always are. But I want him to stay. He's nice. He teaches me things. He makes you smile. Did she smile more lately? Tasha thought about it and realized Brandon was right. The weight she'd been carrying had lightened. The constant stress had eased. And yes, she smiled more. I want him to stay too, she admitted. But wanting something doesn't always make it happen. We have to be prepared for any outcome. Understand? Brandon nodded, but his eyes were sad. Tasha hugged him again, pressing her face against his hair, and prayed she wasn't setting them both up for heartbreak. Because the truth was, she was getting attached too. To Damien's kindness. To his presence in their lives. To the way Brandon lit up around him. To the possibility that maybe, just maybe, they didn't have to be alone anymore. But possibilities weren't promises. And Tasha had learned the hard way that counting on people usually led to disappointment. Still, as she tucked Brandon into bed that night, she allowed herself to hope. Just a little. Just enough to keep moving forward. Because sometimes hope was all you had. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, hope was enough. The emerald green dress fit perfectly. Tasha stared at herself in the dressing room mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. The dress had sleek lines, a modest neckline, and fabric that shimmered slightly under the lights. It was elegant without being flashy. Professional but beautiful. You look stunning, Gloria said from outside the curtain. That's the one. It's too expensive, Tasha protested, checking the price tag for the third time. It's approved. Mr. Cross's orders. And trust me, you're going to want to feel confident tomorrow night. That dress gives confidence. Gloria was right. The dress did make Tasha feel different. Capable. Like someone who belonged in fancy ballrooms coordinating major events. For Brandon, they'd found a navy suit that made him look impossibly grown up. He kept checking himself in the mirror, adjusting his tie, standing straighter. Do I look good, Mom? He asked for the 5th time. You look perfect, baby. Saturday morning arrived too quickly. Tasha woke at 6, her stomach a mess of nerves and excitement. Today was the gala. The culmination of 3 weeks of work, stress, planning, and problem-solving. She arrived at the Grandview Hotel at 7. The ballroom was already transforming, florists arranging centerpieces, tech crew setting up lighting, catering staff preparing the kitchen. Tasha moved through it all with her clipboard and phone, checking details, solving last-minute issues, making sure everything aligned with her vision. Gloria appeared at noon with sandwiches. You need energy for tonight. I'm not hungry. Eat anyway. Trust me. By 4 o'clock, the ballroom looked like something from a magazine. Silver and blue decorations created an elegant atmosphere. Tables were set with white linens and delicate china. The stage was ready for the jazz trio. Everything was perfect. Well, almost everything. The sound system kept cutting out, and Tasha spent an hour with the tech crew fixing the problem. By 5:30, when she finally headed home to shower and change, she was exhausted but cautiously optimistic. You did it, Gloria said, hugging her at the door. It looks amazing. See you tonight. At home, Tasha helped Brandon get ready first. The navy suit transformed her little boy into a young man. She combed his hair, straightened his tie, and tried not to cry at how fast he was growing. Do I really look okay? He asked one more time. You look so handsome I can barely stand it, she said honestly. Then it was her turn. The emerald dress slid on smoothly. She'd never owned anything this nice. Heels that actually fit properly. Simple jewelry Gloria had helped her pick out. Makeup that made her features glow without looking overdone. When she emerged from her bedroom, Brandon's eyes went wide. Mom, you're beautiful. Thank you, baby. Damien is going to think so too. Tasha's heart skipped. She'd been trying not to think about seeing Damien tonight. Not as her boss at the office, but dressed up at an event she'd created, surrounded by his world. Mrs. Chin had agreed to drive them to the hotel. She gasped when she saw them both. Look at you two. Like royalty. The drive was short but felt endless. When they arrived at the Grandview, guests were already streaming in. Tasha's heart pounded as she and Brandon entered through the main doors. The ballroom was full of people in tuxedos and evening gowns, champagne glasses, soft music from the jazz trio. Everything looked even better with people enjoying it. Tasha felt pride swell in her chest. She'd done this. She'd made this happen. Tasha. She turned at Damien's voice and forgot how to breathe. He wore a classic black tuxedo that fit him perfectly, his hair neatly styled, his smile warm and genuine. He looked like he'd stepped out of a movie. You look incredible, he said softly. So do you, she managed. His eyes held hers for a long moment before dropping to Brandon. And you, sir, look very sharp. That's a great suit. Tasha picked it, Brandon said proudly. She has good taste. She certainly does. Damien offered his arm to Tasha. May I introduce you around? Everyone's been asking about the coordinator who pulled this together. The next hour was a blur of introductions. Wealthy donors, business partners, media representatives, all complimenting the event, the decorations, the atmosphere. Tasha accepted their praise with grace, deflecting credit to the vendors and Gloria, but Damien kept insisting she take ownership. This is all Tasha Williams, he told everyone. She's the genius behind tonight. Brandon stayed close to Damien, clearly a bit overwhelmed by all the adults but managing well. When dinner was served, Tasha realized Damien had seated them at his table. Not off to the side. Not hidden away. Right there with his important guests as if they belonged. The salmon was cooked perfectly. The speeches were heartfelt. The donations exceeded expectations. Everything was working. After dinner, the jazz trio transitioned to dancing music. Couples moved to the floor, swaying under the soft lighting. Dance with me? Damien asked Tasha. Her heart stopped. I'm working. You're a guest. Everything's running smoothly. Take a break. Please? How could she refuse when he looked at her like that? She let him lead her to the dance floor, hyper-aware of his hand on her waist, her hand in his. You should be proud, Damien said as they moved together. This is a huge success. I had help. A lot of help. You had support. But the vision, the execution, the care in every detail, that was you. He smiled. I knew you could do it. I wasn't sure I could. From the moment you walked into that chaotic situation at the restaurant and took charge, I knew you had what it takes. They danced in silence for a moment. Tasha let herself enjoy it, the feeling of being held, of moving with someone, of being part of something beautiful. What happens after tonight? She asked quietly. Damien's hand tightened slightly on her waist. What do you want to happen? I don't know. This job was temporary. 3 weeks. It doesn't have to be. His eyes were serious now. I meant what I said about the permanent position. Director of events for Crosstech. You'd handle all our major functions. Better pay. Benefits. Job security. Tasha's breath caught. You're serious? Completely. You're talented, Tasha. I don't want to lose that. And Brandon? And this. She gestured between them. Whatever this is, that doesn't have to end either. Unless you want it to. Damien stopped dancing, standing still in the middle of the floor while others moved around them. I like spending time with you. With Brandon. I like who I am when I'm with you both. If you'll let me, I'd like to keep being part of your lives. Not as a boss. As a friend. Or maybe, eventually, something more. Tasha's eyes burned. This was it. The moment where she either let fear win or chose hope. Where she either protected herself or took a risk on something real. I'd like that too, she whispered. Very much. Damien's smile was brilliant. He pulled her close, resuming their dance, and Tasha let herself melt into the moment. Let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, fairy tales could happen to single mothers with 7-year-olds and second-hand dresses. Well, not second-hand anymore. This dress was hers. This night was hers. This joy was hers. And possibly, just possibly, the man holding her could be hers too. Brandon appeared at the edge of the dance floor, waving excitedly. They broke apart, laughing, and went to join him. The three of them spent the rest of the evening together, a makeshift family in the middle of elegance and wealth. When the last guest departed, when the staff began cleanup, when Brandon dozed off in a chair with his tie loosened, Tasha looked around at what she'd created and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Complete and utter happiness. Damien stood beside her, his jacket off, his sleeves rolled up, looking tired but content. "We did it," she said. "You did it. I just provided support." That support meant everything. She turned to face him fully. "Thank you. For the job. For believing in me. For being kind to Brandon. For all of it. Thank you for saying yes. For taking the chance. For letting me in." He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear in a gesture so tender it made her heart ache. "This is just the beginning, Tasha. If you'll have me, if you'll let me, I'd like to see where this goes." She thought about all the reasons to say no. All the ways this could go wrong. All the fears she'd carried for so long. Then she thought about hope. About kindness. About the look on Brandon's face when Damien taught him new things. About feeling supported instead of alone. "I'd like that too," she said again, meaning it even more this time. Damien's smile could have lit the entire ballroom. And somewhere in Tasha's chest, a door she'd kept locked for years finally, completely opened. Letting in light. Letting in possibility. Letting in love. Monday morning felt strange. The gala was over. The 3-week job had ended. Tasha sat in her temporary office, staring at the boxes she was supposed to pack, and felt completely lost. Gloria knocked gently before entering. "How are you feeling?" "Weird. Like I accomplished something huge and now I don't know what comes next." "Did Mr. Cross talk to you about the permanent position?" "He did. At the gala." Tasha fidgeted with a pen. "He offered me director of events." "That's wonderful. So when do you start officially?" "I haven't accepted." Gloria's eyebrows rose. "Why not?" The truth was complicated. Messy. Tied up in fear and old wounds and the protective walls Tasha had built around her heart. "Because I'm scared," she admitted. "Of depending on him. Of Brandon getting more attached. Of building a life around someone who might leave." Gloria sat down across from her, her expression understanding. "His father. Brandon's father. He left when Brandon was 6 months old. Said he couldn't handle the responsibility. That fatherhood wasn't what he signed up for." Tasha's voice cracked slightly. "I believed him when he said he loved us. I believed we were building something. And then one day he was just gone. Took his stuff and disappeared. No explanation. No goodbye. Nothing. And you think Damien would do the same?" "I don't know. That's the problem. He seems genuine. He seems kind. But so did Brandon's father at first." Tasha pressed her palms against her eyes. "What if I accept this job, accept him in our lives, and then he realizes single mothers and 7-year-olds are too much complication for a billionaire CEO? What if Brandon gets hurt? What if he doesn't?" Gloria said gently. "What if Damien is exactly who he appears to be? A good man who genuinely cares about you both? Then I'm risking everything by saying no. But I'm also risking everything by saying yes. So which risk do I choose?" Gloria reached across and squeezed her hand. "Only you can answer that. But I will tell you this. I've worked for Damien for 15 years. I've seen him with dozens of women. Not one of them made him smile the way you do. Not one of them brought him to work early just so he could stop by your office and check on you. Not one of them made him take time off on weekends to build toy cities with children." Tasha's throat tightened. What if it's not enough? What if caring isn't the same as staying? What if it is? The question hung between them. Tasha had no answer. By Wednesday she still hadn't given Damien a decision. He'd respected her space, hadn't pushed, but she could see the questions in his eyes every time their paths crossed in the building. Thursday afternoon he knocked on her office door. "Can we talk?" "Of course." Tasha set down the vendor file she'd been reviewing. Damien closed the door and sat across from her. He looked tired. Stressed. Not like the confident CEO she'd first met. "I need to know what you're thinking," he said directly. "About the job. About us." There it was. The thing they'd been dancing around, The connection that had built over 3 weeks of work and weekend building sessions and quiet conversations. I'm thinking I'm terrified, Tasha said honestly. That this feels too good to be real. That I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. What other shoe? The one where you realize we're too much trouble. Where you get bored or overwhelmed or decide that billionaires and single mothers don't actually mix well. She met his eyes. The one where you leave and Brandon asks me why everyone leaves us. Damien flinched like she'd slapped him. You think I'd do that? Hurt Brandon like that? I don't know what you'd do. I don't know you well enough. You know me better than most people, Damien said, his voice tight. You've seen me at my worst, dealt with my business problems, spent time in my home. What do I have to do to prove I'm not going anywhere? You can't prove that. No one can. People change. Situations change. Feelings change. So you're saying no? To the job? To everything? The pain in his voice almost broke her resolve. Almost made her take it back, apologize, accept everything he was offering. But fear was stronger. I'm saying I need to go back to my regular life. To what I know. To what's safe. She stood, creating distance between them. I appreciate everything you've done. The job. The opportunities. The kindness to Brandon. But I can't build my life around you. I can't let Brandon build his life around you. It's too risky. Life is risky, Tasha. Staying closed off is risky too. You're risking happiness. Risking love. Risking everything good that could happen because you're afraid of what might go wrong. Maybe. But it's my risk to take. Or not take. Damien stood slowly. His expression was carefully blank now, professional. The warmth she'd grown used to seeing was gone. Okay, he said quietly. I respect your decision. If you change your mind, the offer stands. But I won't push. I won't chase. You know where to find me if you want to. He left without another word. The door clicked shut behind him and Tasha sank back into her chair, her whole body shaking. She'd done it. Protected herself. Protected Brandon. Made the safe choice. So why did it feel like she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life? Friday was her last official day. She packed her office, said goodbye to Gloria, and left Crosstech Tower with a final paycheck that would cover 3 months of bills. Financial security. That's what she'd gained from this experience. But walking out those doors felt like leaving a piece of herself behind. At home, Brandon immediately noticed something was wrong. Did you see Damien today? Yes, baby. When can we go back to his apartment? To work on the city? Tasha's heart cracked. I don't think we'll be going back for a while. Why not? Because. How did she explain this to a 7-year-old? How did she make him understand fears and walls and protective instincts? Because I'm not working for him anymore. The job ended. But we're still friends, right? He said we're friends. Sometimes friendships change, baby. Brandon's face crumpled. Did he leave? Like Dad? No, honey. This is different. Then why can't we see him? Because it's complicated. That's what adults say when they don't want to explain. Brandon's eyes filled with tears. I thought he liked us. I thought he was staying. He ran to his room. His door slammed. Tasha stood in the living room, alone, and finally let herself cry. 2 weeks passed. Tasha went back to the restaurant. Mr. Peterson rehired her, probably because good servers were hard to find. Everything went back to normal. Work, home, bills, stress. The same routine she'd lived for 3 years. Except it wasn't the same. Because now she knew what else was possible. Knew what it felt like to have help. To have support. To have someone look at her like she mattered. Brandon stopped asking about Damien after the first week, but Tasha caught him staring at the box of building blocks sometimes. Saw the way his face fell when other kids at school talked about things they did with their fathers. She'd protected him from one potential hurt and delivered a different one. The hurt of losing someone who'd been kind. Someone who'd cared. Someone who might have stayed if she'd only given him the chance. Mrs. Chin tried to talk to her about it. That man at the gala, the handsome one who couldn't take his eyes off you. What happened there? Nothing happened. That's the problem, isn't it? Nothing happened because you didn't let it. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You're scared. But honey, being scared is a reason to be careful. Not a reason to give up on happiness entirely. On the third Sunday after the gala, Tasha took Brandon to the park. He played half-heartedly on the swings, his earlier enthusiasm gone. She pushed him gently, watching his sad face, and made a decision. Maybe she'd been wrong. Maybe she'd let fear control her when she should have let hope lead. Maybe protecting Brandon from possible future hurt had created definite present hurt. Maybe it was time to be brave. That evening, after Brandon was in bed, Tasha pulled out her phone. Stared at Damien's contact information. Her finger hovered over the call button. What would she even say? Sorry? I was scared? Can we try again? Would he even want to hear from her after she'd rejected everything he offered? Only one way to find out. She pressed call before she could lose her nerve. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then voicemail. His professional voice asking her to leave a message. Tasha hung up without speaking. Maybe that was her answer. Maybe he'd moved on. Maybe she'd waited too long. But as she lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, she refused to accept that. Refused to believe that kindness died that easily. That hope ended with one unanswered phone call. Tomorrow, she decided. Tomorrow she'd try again. Tomorrow she'd be brave enough to risk everything for the chance at happiness. Because Brandon deserved a life with someone who cared about him. And she deserved a life with someone who saw her worth. Even if it was terrifying. Even if it might end badly. Even if the risk was enormous. Sometimes the biggest risk wasn't taking a chance. Sometimes the biggest risk was never taking it at all. Monday morning, Tasha woke with purpose. Today was Brandon's 8th birthday. He should have been excited, planning his party, talking about presents and cake. Instead, he'd been subdued for weeks, missing the person who'd brightened his life so briefly. That ended today. Whether Damien wanted to see them or not, Tasha owed it to Brandon to try. Owed it to herself too. She called Crosstech at 9:30 after dropping Brandon at school. Gloria answered as always. Crosstech Industries, how may I help you? Gloria, it's Tasha. Pause. Then warmth flooded Gloria's voice. Tasha. It's good to hear from you. How are you? Honestly? Miserable. I made a mistake and I need to fix it. Is Damien available? He's in meetings all day. But Tasha, he's been miserable too. Barely smiles. Works late every night. I think he'd want to hear from you. Can you give me his home address? I promise I'm not being weird or stalking him. It's Brandon's birthday and I just want to ask if he'd consider stopping by. Just for a few minutes. Gloria didn't hesitate. Sending it now. And Tasha? I'm glad you called. The text came through with an address Tasha already knew. She'd been there once, but seeing it written out made it real. Made this plan concrete. After work at the restaurant, after picking Brandon up from school, after a quiet dinner where her son pushed food around his plate without eating, Tasha made a decision. Baby, get your jacket. We're going somewhere. Where? You'll see. The drive to Damien's apartment building took 20 minutes. Tasha's hands shook on the steering wheel. What if he slammed the door in her face? What if he'd moved on, decided single mothers were too complicated after all? What if she'd ruined everything beyond repair? The building doorman looked skeptical when she asked to see Damien Cross, but he called up. After a tense moment, he nodded. You can go up. 52nd floor. In the elevator, Brandon finally showed some spark of interest. Are we going to see Damien? Maybe. If he wants to see us. Why wouldn't he want to see us? Because I pushed him away. Because I was too scared to take what he offered. Because I hurt him. Just remember your manners, okay? The elevator opened onto a hallway with only 2 doors. Tasha found Damien's and knocked before she could lose her nerve. The door opened. Damien stood there in jeans and a t-shirt, looking tired and surprised. His eyes widened when he saw them. Tasha. Brandon. Hi, Tasha managed. Can we come in? Just for a minute? He stepped back without a word. They entered the familiar space. The building set still sat on the dining table, unchanged since they'd last been there. Seeing it made Tasha's chest hurt. What are you doing here? Damien asked, his tone careful. Not angry but guarded. It's my birthday, Brandon announced. I'm 8 now. Something in Damien's expression cracked. Happy birthday, Brandon. I didn't want a party. Mom asked what I wanted and I said I wanted to see you. To finish building the city. But she said that was complicated. Brandon looked between them with wisdom beyond his years. Adults make everything complicated. Damien's eyes met Tasha's. The hurt she saw there almost undid her completely. Brandon, baby, can you wait in the hallway for just a minute? I need to talk to Damien alone. Fine. But don't mess this up, Mom. He walked to the door, closed it behind him, and left them in loaded silence. He's right, Tasha said quietly. I made everything complicated. When it didn't have to be. Why are you here, Tasha? Because I was wrong. Because I let fear control me when I should have let hope lead. Because I hurt my son by protecting him from something that might never have happened. She took a step closer. Because I miss you. Brandon misses you. And I don't want to spend the rest of my life wondering what could have been if I'd just been brave enough to try. Damien was quiet for a long moment. Then, what changed? Nothing. Everything. I realized that losing you because I pushed you away hurt just as much as losing you because you left would have. So why not take the risk? Why not believe that good things can actually happen to me? You think I'm a good thing? I think you're the best thing that's happened to us in years. I think you're kind and patient and genuine. I think my son lights up when he's with you in ways I've never seen before. I think. Her voice broke. I think I'm falling in love with you and that terrifies me, but it also feels like the most honest thing I've ever admitted. Damien closed the distance between them in 2 steps. His hands cupped her face, his thumbs brushing away tears she hadn't realized were falling. I'm not going anywhere, he said fiercely. I need you to hear that. Really hear it. I'm not Brandon's father. I'm not going to wake up one day and decide this is too hard. I'm in this. Completely. If you'll let me. I'll let you, Tasha whispered. I want to let you. I want to take the job and see where this goes and let Brandon have someone who cares about him. I want all of it. I'm just scared. Being scared is okay. We can be scared together. But Tasha, you have to trust me. Can you do that? Could she? Tasha looked into his eyes at the honesty there, the hope, the feeling that mirrored her own and made a choice. The brave choice. The hope choice. The choice that said love was worth the risk. Yes, she said. I trust you. Damien kissed her. Soft and gentle and full of promise. Tasha melted into it, let herself feel the joy of being wanted, being held, being chosen. When they broke apart, both breathless, Damien rested his forehead against hers. Can we invite Brandon back in now? I have a birthday present for him, and I've been waiting 3 weeks to give it to him. They opened the door. Brandon stood in the hallway trying not to look like he'd been eavesdropping. Are you done being complicated? He asked. Damien laughed. Yes, we're done. Want to come see your birthday present? Brandon's whole face transformed with joy. He raced into the apartment and Damien led him to a closet. From inside he pulled out a massive building set. Not blocks this time, but a complex engineering kit with moving parts and electronic components. It's a robotics set, Damien explained. We can build robots together. Program them. Make them do different things. Brandon stared at it with awe. Really? This is for me? Really? Happy birthday, Brandon. Brandon threw his arms around Damien's waist. Thank you. This is the best present ever. Over her son's head, Damien's eyes found Tasha's. The message was clear. I meant what I said. I'm staying. This is real. And for the first time in 8 years, Tasha let herself believe it. They spent the evening building, the 3 of them crowded around the dining table, following instructions, laughing at mistakes, celebrating small successes. It felt like family. Like belonging. Like home. When it was time to leave, Brandon hugged Damien again. Can we come back tomorrow? How about this weekend? We'll work on the robot and expand the city. Deal. In the car, Brandon was more animated than Tasha had seen him in weeks. Mom, did you fix it? With Damien? I think I did, baby. Good. Because I really like him. I really like him too. Are you going to marry him? Tasha nearly drove off the road. Brandon. It's way too early for that. But maybe someday? Maybe. Probably. Hopefully. But she couldn't say that to her 8-year-old. Not yet. Not when everything was still so new. Let's just enjoy having him in our lives right now, she said diplomatically. Okay. But I think you should. Marry him. He makes you happy. Out of the mouths of children, Tasha thought again. Saying the truth adults were too scared to acknowledge. That night, after Brandon was asleep, Tasha's phone buzzed. A text from Damien. Thank you for coming tonight. For giving us a chance. I meant every word I said. I'm not going anywhere. Sleep well. She typed back. Thank you for the second chance. For being patient. For caring about us. Sweet dreams. The response came immediately. Sweet dreams. See you this weekend. Tasha fell asleep with a smile on her face, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. Feeling hopeful. Feeling like maybe, just maybe, taking the risk had been the right choice after all. Because sometimes love required a leap of faith. Sometimes happiness demanded courage. Sometimes the best things in life came only to those brave enough to reach for them. And Tasha Williams had finally found her courage. 6 months later, Tasha walked into her office at Crosstech Tower and still felt a small thrill of ownership. Her nameplate no longer said temporary coordinator. It said director of events, and underneath, a list of upcoming projects that made her heart race with excitement and challenge. She'd taken the permanent position 2 weeks after Brandon's birthday. Damien had respected her need to take things slow, never pushing, always supporting. They dated properly. Dinners, movies, long walks talking about everything and nothing. Getting to know each other outside the crisis that had brought them together. Brandon thrived. His grades improved. His confidence grew. He joined the robotics club at school, inspired by the weekend building sessions with Damien. Every Sunday the three of them worked on projects together, building increasingly complex structures and machines. Tasha's mother had always said the true test of a relationship was time. Time revealed character. Time showed whether promises meant anything. 6 months of time had shown her that Damien meant every promise he'd made. He showed up. Every single time. When Brandon had a science fair, Damien was there. When Tasha pulled a late night planning a corporate retreat, Damien brought her dinner and kept her company. When her car finally died completely, Damien helped her buy a new one, offering a loan with reasonable terms instead of charity. Partners help each other, he'd said. That's not charity. That's investment in people you care about. He'd been introduced to Mrs. Chin, who'd given him the thorough questioning all protective neighbors gave new boyfriends. He'd apparently passed, because now Mrs. Chin invited him to dinner regularly and tried to teach him how to make proper dumplings. Life had settled into something Tasha had never experienced before. Stability, joy, partnership, which made what she was about to do absolutely terrifying. Gloria knocked on her office door, peeking in with a knowing smile. Ready for lunch? As ready as I'll ever be. They were meeting Damien at his favorite diner. The same one he'd taken Tasha to during the gala planning, when she'd been spiraling about the music crisis. It had become their spot, the place where real conversations happened. Damien was already there when they arrived, in a booth by the window. He stood when he saw Tasha, kissing her cheek before they sat. This feels formal, he said, looking between them. Am I in trouble? No, Tasha said, her heart hammering. I just wanted to talk to you about something. With Gloria here as backup. His expression shifted to concern. Okay. Talk. Tasha took a breath. I want to move in with you. Silence. Complete, utter silence. Damien stared at her. Gloria watched them both with barely contained excitement. You want to move in? Damien repeated slowly. Yes. Brandon and I. If you want us. Our lease is up in 2 months, and instead of renewing, I thought. She faltered under his intense gaze. Maybe it's too soon. Maybe I'm rushing things. No, Damien said quickly. No, it's not too soon. I just wanted to be sure I heard you right. A smile spread across his face. You want to move in? With me? You and Brandon. If it's okay. If you're ready. Tasha, I've been ready since about week 2 of knowing you. I just didn't want to push. Didn't want to scare you away by moving too fast. He reached across the table, taking her hands. Yes. Absolutely yes. Move in. Both of you. Make my apartment a home. Gloria squealed quietly, pressing her hands to her mouth. Tasha laughed, relief flooding through her so strongly she felt dizzy. There's one condition though, Damien added, his expression turning serious. Tasha's stomach dropped. What? Let me help you properly. Not loans. Not temporary arrangements. Real help. I want to set up a college fund for Brandon. I want to make sure you both have everything you need. I want to be part of your family officially, not just as the boyfriend who comes around sometimes. What are you saying? Damien slid out of the booth, and Tasha's breath stopped entirely when he knelt beside the table. From his pocket he pulled a small velvet box. I'm saying I love you. Both of you. I'm saying I want every morning to start with your faces. Every evening to end with Brandon's questions about robotics and your laugh when he says something unexpectedly wise. I'm saying I want to build a life together, not just visit one. He opened the box. Inside sat a simple ring, elegant and perfect. Tasha Williams, will you marry me? Will you let me be Brandon's father officially? Will you trust me with your heart permanently? Tasha's eyes flooded with tears. 6 months ago she'd been too scared to even accept a job offer. Now she was staring. At a proposal, at a man who'd proven his worth over and over, at the possibility of forever. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. We'll marry you. Damien slipped the ring on her finger, then stood and pulled her into his arms. The other diners in the restaurant burst into applause. Gloria was crying openly. And Tasha felt like her heart might burst from happiness. We should tell Brandon, she said against Damien's chest. Right now. Together. Let's go. They left the diner, Gloria waving them off with joyful tears. The drive to Brandon's school felt both endless and too short. When they signed him out early claiming a family emergency, he looked worried. What's wrong? Is someone sick? No, baby. Nothing's wrong. We just need to talk to you about something important. They drove to the park near their apartment. Brandon sat between them on a bench, his backpack at his feet, his expression serious. What's going on? He asked. Damien took a breath. Brandon, I love your mom very much. And I love you very much. I want to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Okay. How would you feel if I asked your mom to marry me? If I became part of your family permanently? Brandon's eyes went wide. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face. Did you ask her already? I did. She said yes. But it only happens if you're okay with it. You're part of this family. Your opinion matters. Brandon looked at Tasha. Do you want to marry him? Very much. And he's going to stay? Forever? He's not going to leave like Dad did. Never, Damien said firmly. I promise you, Brandon. I will never leave. Not your mom. Not you. We're a family now if you want to be. Brandon launched himself at Damien, wrapping his arms around his neck. Yes, I want to be a family. Can I call you Dad? Damien's arms tightened around him and Tasha saw tears on his face. I would be honored if you called me Dad. The three of them sat on that park bench holding each other and Tasha felt years of fear and pain and loneliness finally, completely release. This was it. This was the life she'd stopped believing in. The life where kindness was real. Where love lasted. Where promises were kept. Where hope won. The wedding was small, just close friends and family. Brandon stood beside Damien as the best man, looking proud in his suit. Mrs. Chen cried through the entire ceremony. Gloria officiated, having gotten ordained online just for the occasion. When Damien kissed his bride, Brandon cheered louder than anyone. The apartment became their home. Tasha's small belongings merged with Damien's nicer things, creating a space that was uniquely theirs. Brandon's room filled with building sets and robotics kits. The dining table permanently hosted some project in progress. At work, Tasha continued to excel. She coordinated events across the country, built a reputation for excellence and mentored younger coordinators coming up behind her. She'd found her calling and it felt amazing. But the best part was coming home. Walking through the door to Brandon's excited chatter about his day, to Damien's warm hug, to the smell of dinner cooking and the sound of laughter. Family. Real, stable, loving family. One Sunday morning, 2 years after the wedding, Tasha woke to find Damien already up, making pancakes with Brandon. They were covered in flour, laughing at some joke she'd missed. Morning, sleepyhead, Damien said, kissing her forehead. We're making heart-shaped pancakes. Why hearts? Because we wanted to show you how much we love you, Brandon said simply, flipping a pancake with surprising skill. Tasha's eyes filled with tears. Happy tears. Grateful tears. The kind of tears that came from overwhelming joy. I love you both so much, she whispered. We know, they said in unison, then laughed. After breakfast, as they cleaned the kitchen together, Brandon asked, Mom, remember when you were scared to trust Damien? I do, baby. I'm glad you got brave. Being brave made us a family. Tasha looked at Damien, at the life they'd built, at the 10-year-old son who had a father now, and smiled. Me too, Brandon. Me too. Because in the end, that's what it came down to. Courage. Hope. The willingness to believe that good things could happen. The strength to accept help when offered. The wisdom to recognize love when it showed up. Tasha had learned that lesson the hard way. But standing in her kitchen, surrounded by the people she loved most, covered in pancake flour and filled with joy, she knew every struggle had been worth it. Every fear she'd overcome. Every risk she'd taken. Every moment she'd chosen hope over doubt. All of it had led here. To home. To family. To love. And that, she thought as Damien pulled her close and Brandon hugged them both, was exactly what happily ever after looked like. Not perfect. Not without challenges. But real and solid and full of endless possibility. The kind of future built on kindness, trust, and the simple belief that sometimes, when you let the right people in, they stay. Forever.